welcome. It's really a pleasure to be with you all, and I'm really pleased to be sharing from my home to your homes in this really strange environment that we're working in. Some of our thoughts and perspectives on the way open banking is developing, especially in the context of a post-COVID world, working with MuleSoft, and the way Capgemini is certainly interlocking some of our previous experiences and repivoting to the new world. So welcome, my name is Colin Payne. I'm a Vice President in Capgemini. I lead next generation financial services, and one of my passions is to bring to the market something brand new, something digital, and something that's going to enable customers to lock in on what they need. And we call that inventive banking in Capgemini. We've taken that to the market with partners, including MuleSoft. I'm absolutely thrilled to say, and it's a real pleasure to be here sharing this information with you. So I'm going to dive straight into my presentation and share with you some of our thoughts and perspectives. And as I say, this is around evolution. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover some of the context of the market. And really this is born from all of our discussions with most of you and the work that we're doing to research how this changing market is impacting us all. The impact of COVID, of course, we've got to cover some of that, and how those challenges are now moving into the market, impacting the clients that we have, impacting the customers that the clients have as well. And then, of course, the approach to how the banking industry is changing, financial services broadly, how MuleSoft help us and how together we can approach the market in different ways. And then I'm going to cover some different use cases that we're seeing in the market. And this is really important because the one thing we are able to do with MuleSoft is to become extremely tangible. It's not sufficient anymore to create a PowerPoint with thoughts around the future. This is about building tangible products and getting them out into the market. That's the important thing. So let's dive in. We know financial services is facing enormous pressure. We live it daily, and we try to work with our clients to unlock some of that pressure. But we understand that obviously customers' needs have changed massively in the last 2 to 3 years. We've been flagging this change because Capgemini has been aware of it. But of course, with COVID and with the changes to the work environments, this has accelerated some of that demand change. So customers' needs are absolutely flipping on their head for most financial institutions. The requirement to be digital first is absolute now. The idea of physical channels, of course, in a post-COVID world has changed entirely. Increased competition has come from all dimensions, whether it's fintechs, big techs, other new banks, other new financial players, and indeed other sectors, all involved in taking part of the value chain away from the banks that we know and love. Of course, regulation has played an enormous part in change as well. So the evolving regulatory and security risks that have come in the last 3 to 5 years are only accelerating as well. So not only have you got to deal with the customer change, you've got to deal with the regulatory requirements that come around that. What we've all seen in the last few weeks, months, is the squeeze on margin continuing as well. So the last 2 years have seen margins shredded, and then the new players coming in to take part of that value away. But now, of course, we're almost in zero interest, and this is extremely difficult for us to manage margins now, keep costs down, and to find new revenues. And finally, the IT infrastructure that most of us are dealing with is complex, legacy, and requires a huge amount of core transformation in order to move on. And of course, the benefit of an API-led solution, which is what we advocate, is that we can work with that legacy and slowly but surely update that. Now, how are we going to respond to that pressure? Now, there's many responses that banks are looking at. I've mentioned the core. It's one of the bigger issues around modernization. It's certainly a tough thing for most banks to consider because they have this spaghetti of legacy systems. So we do work with our clients to look at modernization paths. That doesn't necessarily mean big bang. There are many other ways to help in that respect. And so we're going to cover a little bit about that later. For us, the important thing is to focus on the customer. People have talked about customer centricity for many years, but it's fair to say that banks have found it difficult to become truly customer centric. Often their data is not as clear cut as it should be and not as correct as it should be. So we feel a single, correct customer view that delivers insights is critical to respond to these pressures. Of course, the experience has to be great. There's no question that customers will demand and have demanded for some time clean, simple, seamless experiences with banking. Most banks have risen to that challenge and improved the experiences a great deal, but there are still issues. The ability to move from channel to channel, for example, is not as it should be. So there's plenty to do there in terms of responding to the pressure. We're also going to cover a little bit about banking as a service. So for us in Capgemini, we believe banking is transforming, and the ability to offer services at any point of need within any channel is going to be critical. But it also gives you one of the biggest opportunities to change. And that's obviously predicated on the principles of open banking. So these are the responses that we see on day-to-day in our customers' environments. Now, let's think about COVID as well, because we're all living with COVID now in terms of the impacts. The economic impacts are going to flow through rapidly, and with interest rate cuts almost immediately. We've seen a shift to digital payments, not surprisingly, away from cash and into the more, as you'd expect, the more digital contactless domain. With remote work, as we're all enjoying, I would say at the moment, the ability to collaborate and work with your financial institutions has turned on its head. And of course, there's an enormous amount of relief programs globally that have started. And I think, again, it's fair to say the banks have had challenges in meeting some of those demands of the relief programs. But of course, those are going to accelerate as well as more relief is required as we enter into what are going to be difficult recessionary times. So these are massive impacts that leverage some of the problems we've had before. So the critical thing is to always focus on the customer. And what are we hearing from the customers? Well, you can see on screen, there's a number of concerns they have, and these are unsurprising. We're in a situation which is new for most of our customers who are in some vulnerability now. People are just concerned about the future. So, of course, a lot of their concerns are around debt, relief. They're looking for safe havens for their cash. There's obviously a shift in channel because the physical channels have predominantly closed, and they've switched a lot of their banking and financial services to digital channels. So these all are the things that feed into our concerns and thoughts around how banking has to change, and has to change quickly, because this is not something that can happen over a long period of time as banks are used to doing change. This transformation is now. And all of our research points to the fact that this is a pivot moment that has to be acted upon. So how do we act upon it quickly? How do banks respond? Well, of course, the IT departments are focusing on their mission critical, their services that have to be there, keeping the lights on. Innovation and discretionary spending have changed. At the beginning, there was a freeze, that's for sure. Of course, you lock the hatches down. What do you have to do? You have to concern yourself with the lights on situation. Absolutely critical. But we've seen a switch in the last few weeks where there's been a recognition through discussion that actually continued innovation can lead to cost reductions and certainly can lead to growth opportunities. And goodness, in a squeezed margin environment, it's still important to look for those opportunities of the new growth spaces, those areas. So we've seen an uptick in that kind of activity. The mindset is more stable, perhaps, than it was in 2008 because of the capitalization situation. So whilst, of course, the mindset is about preservation and crisis control, there's a feeling of stability and still, okay, we have to move forward in a careful way, but the mindset's slightly different. We're using data, insights, segmentation to more carefully advise and look at the concerns of the customer. So, of course, those reactionary programs where we're concerned about losses or credit can be focused through data on something much more targeted. And I think that's pretty critical now in the months and years ahead. Finally, the ways of working have been transformed. I remember speaking to banks over the last 18 months to 2 years, speaking around the role of the branch in the future, for example, or physical work in the office. I had many conversations with clients who were, I would say, they were against, if you like, that notion of coming away from the physical. They felt that there was the very human touch was needed. Well, of course, we've still got the human touch, but we've transferred to new channels. And the way we work has been substantially challenged. the way we collaborate together, using these kind of Zoom and other devices help us to communicate and collaborate. So, of course, this big experiment has led us to understand that actually that way of working is now possible. So, for us, we've absolutely focused in on partnership as the critical word to focus on over the next few months and years. Partnership with your customers, partnership with your third-party suppliers and vendors, and of course, partnership with your staff and collaboration internally. So you have to listen, assist and help, and suggest new ways of working. So this is the model that we believe is the future. And we believe that actually the challenges that the banking industry is facing are responded to directly by this way. We've talked about the complexity of the legacy, and we know those application landscapes are as complex as the worst spaghetti you can imagine. So how will our customer be meeting those expectations of changing that landscape? It's a really difficult nut to crack. Many of us have been involved in core transformations for many, many years, and we know how difficult it is. We've got the scars to prove it. Now, APIs lead us to a potential solution for that, which we'll cover later. They also help us reduce the costs, because, of course, the rising operational costs of legacy are crippling for most of our clients. So, again, by focusing on this, reducing the complexity, starting to wind down that legacy through using APIs is going to reduce those rising operational costs. That's critical in 2020 now. And how do we meet the customer expectations? We've got to deliver nimble experiences which absolutely delight them. We want to deliver frictionless, contactless banking, personal recommendations. These things are very, very challenging to deliver, as we all know, in the legacy environments. We believe with APIs, it unlocks a huge opportunity to meet those expectations. And of course, by doing that, we face straight into the competition. We can play the same game using the tools that we have as the big techs, as the fintechs. We can be as efficient, we can be delightful, and we can deliver as great an experience to really stimulate those customers as any fintech would do. And we do that with the right tool sets. Now, if we just talk about COVID, of course, it's accelerated all of this. So if you look at those immediate concerns of recession, recovery, expectations, regulation change, of course, that's all going to be amplified in a COVID world. But as we come out of this, as we move into a rebound position, well, we're looking to replenish the revenues. We've got to optimize the channels. We're going to reframe all of the processes. The brilliant thing about this is it gives us the opportunity to genuinely do that. And now many, many clients of ours have been talking about doing this work for years. And it is years, decades in some cases. We've now got to a position where it's a real pivot. This is when we do it. We do it from now. We start from now. So let's move on to the implications, just to reframe them. What is the impact to all of our clients? Well, we've talked about margin. We've talked about the loss of fee income. Now, of course, this has been felt in the pockets of most of the banks, and it's reflected in the share prices. So it's probably top of the agenda. How do we fix margin and fee? It's a major problem for most banks. So we believe that we have to offer a tool set that's going to head on to this and face into it straight away. How are we going to stop the losses? Because there's going to be a rise in delinquencies. We've got to be smarter in how we handle that kind of debt, those kind of delinquencies, the kind of risks to credit. We've got to be smarter about it. And again, we believe the API path is something that can help in that rise. Now, customers, I mentioned, were shifting to safer havens. Now, I personally feel that most of the banks are doing very well to rise to the requirement here. However, it's a tide of change. Now, most of us who have investments in any way, shape, or form have looked to secure those or to take to optimize actually what's happening in the markets. Now, that means a great shift in terms of the banks to respond to that. And the digital channels that we operate through, they're creaking under the requirements that the customers are shifting in terms of asset allocation. Now, trust as well, and for me, trust is a really important word for you guys. Managing trust in this environment is probably number one. You have got to keep your customers on board. The stickiness of the customer is absolutely, it's the most imperative thing that you have to focus on. So ensuring you protect their trust, amplifying intimacy and advocacy, creating those interactions that are meaningful for the customers, it's really, really important. And then finally, the speed that you respond. That sense of speed, that value that you're delivering into the market. It's really important, both internally and to your customer facing, to make sure you're nimble enough. We talk about agile. It's been in the market for years. Again, has it really been embraced and adopted fully, or is it just theatre in your organisations? It's time to close the curtain on agile theatre and make it real, make it nimble. The problem is, of course, you've got to move to a new way of working to do that. So, what does the banking industry do? Our view on this is we've called it inventive banking. It really boils down to some very simple tasks, which are simple but very, very difficult to execute. We believe we have to focus on operational efficiency. We have to collaborate more. So our clients, banks, insurance companies, other financial institutions have not been perfect collaborators by any stretch of the imagination. Now is the time to focus on partnering and collaborating with those partners, because together we're stronger. It's as simple as that. The use of innovation to drive change, but it's targeted innovation. I've mentioned before, it has to be linked to a business case. Innovation has to deliver not just some dream, not deliver a hopeful foray into the future. This has to deliver on the bottom line. So if you're going to listen to anyone talk about innovation, please make sure they tell you how it's going to save you money and how it's going to increase your revenue. Because unless they do, I would show them the door. This is really where we focus. It's practical and applied innovation. And then finally, we want to simplify the architecture. Now, that takes time, but our architecture that we advocate is something around plug and play, very simple, loosely coupled, and using API at the center. Now, what's the approach for banks? We've chosen to partner with MuleSoft because we believe actually a loosely coupled architecture using premium APIs is absolutely the future for banks. It's a platform play, it's a marketplace play, it's an architecture that allows collaboration effectively with any third party and with your customers. So this is a free, open approach, and I think it's very important. To begin with, of course, the banks they're gonna mobilize these red teams to tackle immediate needs. So of course, these immediate tactical requirements are being hit very hard at the moment. But still, at the same time, we've got the blue teams looking strategically. So we've borrowed a little bit from cyber in these terms, but we certainly believe that the majority of work at the moment is to tackle the immediate need, of course, but we have to follow through with the strategy for the long-term outcomes for financial services. And how do we navigate that? Of course, we navigate these immediate priorities now. We communicate with our clients and customers, which needs to be meaningful. It needs to be meaningful to protect the people, protect the customers, tackle these immediate priorities. We have to review and promote alternative channels. So this switch to digital is not optional anymore. It's an absolute need to review your physical channels and look at the promotion of alternative channels. And now I think we're focusing on that midterm preparation rebound. So how do we proactively look at the demand of the rebound? How can we bring the business back on track? We're going to launch programs to improve operational efficiency, of course. We're going to integrate credit models. We're going to improve the customer value chain. And then we're going to pursue the midterm structural changes. We're going to build advantage. And this is with partners such as MuleSoft, who can fit into the structure and the architecture of the legacy to prepare all banks and customers for a future which is very, very different. And I think prepare for those new opportunities. So, of course, our way of doing this is to bring the organization and channels into a unified capability. It's really to provide a platform which we can then broadcast through multiple challenges, through multiple collaborations, through all sorts of channels, and provide brand new experiences to the customer. I mean, this is it. It's an entirely new structural change for most banks. And we've spoken about it for some time, but it's underpinned by collaboration. And really, we believe the only way to collaborate effectively is to use the technology of API and tool sets that are readily available to allow the business to take those unified capabilities and present them as new experiences. Absolutely critical. Now, MuleSoft can help in a number of ways. We've chosen to work with MuleSoft's Anypoint platform. We chose it last year because we believe it was actually the most effective platform to showcase practical use cases. Now, we did that ourselves. We took the Anypoint platform and we built our own banking use cases. Now, you might find that's unusual for a company like Capgemini, but I felt last year we'd done enough working with our clients, we'd done enough speaking to actually put some skin in the game. It was really important for us to step up and show you how it should be done from our point of view. Now, we came to the market and we launched a platform last year at Cybos, and it was based on the Anypoint platform, and it really allowed me and my team to start picking off really tricky use cases and mobilizing the teams to work around those use cases, but importantly, collaborating with the third parties. And we could then demonstrate them practically. And that's the critical thing. This is not a theoretical output. This is a practical output. And Anypoint gives us that capability. What for us, what was really important was creating a set of templates that could accelerate the open banking experience. Now, we had a number of use cases which we supported, and of course they range from onboarding through to payments. We did foreign exchange, but we went beyond banking. We started to look at those use cases that start to bring you into the domain of perhaps the adjacencies. Things like when you talk about foreign exchange, perhaps you're talking about accounting. So we brought in the accounting packages. We folded them in so that a customer could easily access other areas of programming to allow them to give the customer experience they needed to. Imagine a small business that can draw down and allocate transactions and cross-reference them to their accounting packages. Of course, that's a demand. But then perhaps we can connect to the tax office and we can then do the taxes automatically. So these are all what we built last year. And this has allowed us to really get experienced at building inventive use cases. And we've now gone from strength to strength in doing that. We believe that now we can grow and nurture ecosystems that allow us to respond to crises like COVID. We can engage with partners who can really mobilize themselves to fix the customer needs. Now, this is something that would have taken 9 months, 12 months, 18 months in the past. We're now rolling out use cases in 4 to 6 weeks. Obviously a limited engagement first of all, but it scales very easily because of the API MuleSoft solution. The whole point is it's an easy to use product. The experience is personalized. It's coded, not clicks. So I mean, the code is simple. You can create simple experiences through it. You can engage customers with forums and chat and case management. This is an experience manager like no other. So when we saw this last year, we felt actually this is the perfect tool for us to introduce to our clients. And it's been extraordinarily successful. So I'm really pleased with doing this. Of course, as a joint product, we started to build use cases. And I said right at the beginning, I wanted to just finish on some of these use cases to give you some practical examples of what we're doing now. So implementing an open banking platform, for example, would have been beyond most people's capability 3 years ago. Now we're looking at a very simple, structured way of doing this for any of our clients. We unlock the backend, of course, so we bring the data. We use open APIs to secure that data and allow third-party developers to interface with that data. We surface those combined use cases onto applications, and then we can extend reach, we can create innovative solutions, and we've got proof that we can increase revenues. The new experience are building that new revenue. And it's critical. So open banking, I believe, is in a pivot point as well as COVID to push banks into a new world of platform marketplace work. It's a world beyond products and services. It's moving into in a way a more big tech approach to financial services. And this is where you will compete with the likes of the big techs, or indeed collaborate and work with them. Because from our point of view, it's actually going to be that new way of working that pays the dividends. Our banking platform itself allows us to work with fintechs, of course, as well. And I think all of us have tried hard to collaborate effectively with fintechs. So the way we do it now, of course, with this platform is allow them to interface their service capabilities into our APIs. It allows us to improve the experiences and pull through business capabilities out to the engagement of the customer layer. So this is what inventive banking is all about. It's actually fairly simple as an idea. You know, we want the legacy systems to be simplified. We want you to have a platform that allows you to connect to any third party or system you choose and to exchange information to the benefit of your customers. And then to deliver new experiences which create revenue streams. And by doing that, you reduce the cost to serve your customers and provide a more profitable environment for your institutions. And I think that's the critical thing. So all of these use cases speak to that. We can take automation to a brand new level as we move into banking as a service. For our purposes, we can show you, for example, on screen here, the current state processes you may have through your products. We're looking at entire transformation to a future state process, which gives you a focus on surfacing everything as a service that you do out through the platform to be consumed in whichever way a customer needs. This opens up a huge possibility for new business opportunities for you as banks. And I firmly believe that if you move into banking as a service and you really leverage this community of APIs, third parties, and services in the future, you'll be in a winning solution. Now, I'm going to leave you just with a thought which accompanies this slide around API-led architecture. We've worked hard with MuleSoft to create these use cases, and I'm really excited about the partnership that we have. We believe it's absolutely revolutionary for financial services. We believe that this kind of architecture, this way of working, is absolutely critical to now embrace. And I've been delighted to speak to you about this subject. It's been a great, great pleasure. I hope we can speak more in the future. You can get all of my contact details following this webcast. But I'd be really glad to pick up any conversations, any questions afterwards. It's been an absolute delight, and I wish you all well. I hope you're safe, well, and you go forward into this next period of post-COVID, coming out stronger and better and more successful in the future.